Welcome to the third session for Zero Day Cybersecurity Club Beginner Track. In this session, as discussed, we'll be doing bandit discussion and Windows fundamental commands. Just before I start with that, I'll just finish up what I missed last session. Last session is a problem with the netcat. Just I want to still make sure so that you guys understand what's the power of netcat. It's a very famous threat vector we use when exploiting. So as I said last week, netcat is used to like listen to connection or create connections between two devices using different protocols like TCP, IP, and the gateway being the port mentioned here. Some of the famous ports I told last time were the HTTP port, that's your web HTTP and HTTPS. When you go to something like google.com, it's using HTTPS. That is your secure HTTP protocol, hypertext. I forgot the protocol full form. Yeah, the secure HTTP protocol where you can't see what data is being sent. It's encrypted. We'll talk about what kind of encryption they're using in the later sessions. But yeah, let's start with the netcat. Last time I tried to do NC -L 3000, and here I tried to listen to that connection, and that was the issue. The thing was -L works within the same system. Like in this system alone, if I open one more netcat, it's fine because there's no domain name resolution happening. But here now since it's out of the local network. If you remember the ifconfig command we use, there's a local network and the two other interfaces, right? We are jumping from the local network to this Ethernet connection. There are two Ethernet connection for mine. You might see one. Don't be alarmed by that. The one would be, if you use NAT, would be your 10.02.15, and if you use a bridged adapter, that is to connect your virtual machine to your home network. That is the same my laptop is running on. Then you'll have this kind of address. So because of that, there was a problem. -L will not work. You'll have to put -V, I think, was for the domain name resolution. I just added some more parameters. It's a common terminology we use like whenever we do a threat analysis. These are basically a sum of all the parameters we are using. You can read up more on them using the man commands. So yeah, let's listen for connections on port 3000. And let's try to connect to the same from here. Yeah, now you can see the confirmation connection received. So if I type something here, hi, it pops up in the second machine. Just if it's not been clear enough, this is one machine, this is one more machine. This was the machine we set up in the first class, I think, and this is my personal VM I use. So it's a two-way connection. Here we put hi, the message is received here, and similarly if I tell bye here, it should be received there. And Control C to stop the connection. For now, it might look very simple, but later when you are doing exploitation of we are putting different attacks on victim machines, getting a shell on your attacker machine is one of the core things that you will do to crack a machine. The point of penetration testing is to finally get to the root access of the victim machine. In this case, let's assume this is my personal machine and this is our victim machine. Well, I already have access of the victim machine, so I'm able to do the NC command. But imagine using some vulnerability or some weakness in some of the program, I'm able to execute system commands from here. Maybe a website has some wrong configuration, and because of that, I have access over the terminal. To get that access to my terminal on my machine, netcat is useful. How? Like we already did the command, right? The netcat, the IP address, the port number. The port is the same port where we are listening on. Same command. This port is the port. This IP is the IP of this attacker machine, and I tell it to execute something too. That means when it whatever it listens here, it will execute in the victim and send it back to the attacker. So if I do -bin bash. Bash is your terminal interface which you're using. Well, technically here we're using ZSH. Your bash looks a bit different, but bash is the one we typically use. So I just put bash. Now I can execute all system commands in my attacker machine, which will be executed on my victim machine. For example, if I do an ls, This ls is not of the attacker machine, it's of the victim machine. We can even confirm that by, let's open one more terminal, do an ls. It's the exact same. The high client is here. So like this, this is what we call a reverse shell, getting a reverse shell on our machine. There are different ways to get reverse shell, and Netcat is, if Netcat is installed, this is one of the easiest way to get a reverse shell. So that's the power of Netcat. Also, Netcat can also be used to transfer files. I think in the discussions too, some people are asking how to exchange files. This is another way, bit complicated way, but it still works. What we do is, I should actually told you this before when you're discussing Linux itself. For example, we do ls, right, command. I want this output to be stored in one text file. Like for example, this command took some 1 hour to execute. I don't want to wait the 1 hour. I just, when it's over, I wanted to save it to one file, whatever output. This output has been recorded. So for that, we do something called output redirection. That is the greater than symbol we're using here, and the file name where it should be saved. So ls.file maybe. Name it anything because Linux doesn't care about the file extensions. So now you see there's a new file called ls.file, and using the cat command, if I list that file, yeah, now you see it, that has contents of what the ls command executed. So similarly, like that, what we can do is something called input redirection 2. Now I want to send this high client file. I'll just cat it once to see what is there in that. High client. Yeah, that's literally hello there. Now I want to send this file from here to here. It's the same command. Only thing is nc, instead of -e, yeah, -e, I put first as input redirection. Like I want this to be sent as input. Input redirection being high client.txt. Okay, and here now I'm listening. Okay, and if I just execute that, the whatever was contents of high client.txt, that will be outputted here. And I want to go one step further, and I just want to like complete this. Like, okay, we already inputted it. I want to output this also. Like, I want to receive the file properly the way it came. I don't want it to display here. So we do an output redirection. So output redirection, I high client or whatever name I want now. Or txt. So it's listening, and now if I send it, a connection received, and it will save it. Now if I do close it and do an ls, okay, where is it? Where's iClient.txt? That's the wrong file. Wait. Listening, connection received, right? And it terminated and didn't show up. I must be doing something wrong here, but you already saw the halfway through, right? Basically, we can now send files, the content of the files from one place to another, one system to another. So that's Netcat. It can do file sharing, it can do execution of commands, just message passing, and a lot more. Yeah. One more thing from last class was the bidirectional thing, which didn't work out. I still don't know why did it not work out at that moment, but the command you'll have to execute is to make that work is add the guest additions, VirtualBox guest additions. I don't have the command right now. If you Google it, you should find it out. Like, just Google VirtualBox guest additions. Ali. Should be somewhere here. There's a single line command to do it. Yeah, there we go. This one. Just copy this command and run it here, and you should have that guest additions installed. Once you have guest additions installed, the bidirectional thing should work. And last time it didn't work. This time, hope it works. So now I can just drag drop here. So see, Kalpana CTF has come from there to here, and same way reverse also. There. That is the drag and drop. It copies it, doesn't move it. So yeah, that's that. These were the two problems we had last time, so that is clarified. For this week's bandit assignment, the whatever you have learned last two sessions must be enough, but there's some little more extra commands you might need to know. One thing, in fact, I missed to cover last session is, let's open the 0 day first. We'll call it 0 day for the heck of it. Yeah. really zero was. Oh yeah, I'm in root directory. I was in Kali directory. CD 0. Yeah, there we go. If you remember last time, we compiled one C program. The compiled program has gibberish, right? I mean, it's not readable, humanly readable. You don't understand what's happening here. But imagine there was some actual contents here which we could analyze. Like there were some strings which we wanted to get just the human readable files, not the this unreadable files. We do strings. This is the command you see here. Actually, is one famous one we use for most CTFs. In fact, like for example, someone hid a password in this main file. We get all the strings, that is human readable files, and then if you do a grep for password instead of CTF imagine password, we'll get all passwords that are stored in it if it's in plain text. So if I do greps strings a.out, so these are the what you call readable text we can see. The now only the ones which we can understand is here, right? Now stuff like printf is there, so we know there's a printf function happening. And if you remember the execution of program, it prints hello, I think, or hello world. So hello world is not there. For that, later we'll see how stack protection and everything works. But for now, strings, just imagine it removes all the gibberish and keeps only the human readable text which we can understand here. Okay, so that was strings. There's one challenge in Bandit which will require you to understand the different compression methods. Like the ones you must already know is the zipping, right? We zip the file like let's go. Okay, let's open that one. No problem. So imagine I want to zip something. If you have WinZip or something, the extension is .rar or .zip. But like that in Linux we have some more like .tar.gz, and there are a lot more extension and which compresses differently. .gzip is one. So you'll have to know the commands used for these. Some famous commands are gzip. Gzip is to unzip the files having .gzip. Tar, it is tar. Yeah, the tar.gz also is the same. How to uncompress them, you'll have to figure out the commands on your own, but these are the extra commands you'll have to know. One more is base 64. We'll discuss more about base 64 when it comes to CTS, because that's another encryption technique we use. Cyber oh my god. Okay. Second one. All right. Encryption is basically like how do I say, hiding your data. Like for example, you have a my name is Vihar. Okay, I put Vihar, and like it's available in plain text, right? And anyone reads this file, they can see. Okay, let's imagine something like this. Password is that. I don't want to send it like this. I want to make sure it is not seen by the middle person. For example, if I'm sending this to, I don't know, the web or something. Imagine if my internet provider is snooping here, and I don't want him to see this plain text the way it is. I want it to be encrypted in a way such that he doesn't read this at least. I know the way to read it, and the final person should be able to read it. So I encrypt it. We use base 64 is one type of encryption where like base 10 is your decimal system, right? Base 10 is decimal. You have 10 characters. Like that, we have base 32. That is 32 characters. That is your A to Z, small a to Z. And I think it's plus equal to and 3-4 more characters, 28 plus 4 characters. Similarly, base 64 has 64 characters. 28, that is capital A to Z, small a to Z, 0 to 9, then plus slash and equal to. What happens is it converts these characters to a format that is only readable in this new set of characters you're using. For example, P is the number. If you convert to decimal, it will be I don't know. I think it's 68 or something. It comes after 60. 67, I think, is A in decimal for P. Because in the end, all your text you use, right, QWERTY and everything, all have each decimal associated with them. Similarly, the base 64 annotation for them is this one. It clearly is like you won't be able to understand what's happening here, right? So to decrypt it is similar, like the way we encrypted, we can decrypt it also. From and to is there. If I do a 2 again, so pass Vihar. The last is something called padding. We'll talk about that when we deal with encryption again in CTF. Another famous encryption method is ROT13. That is basically rotating. Like imagine we have A to Z, right? Imagine I'm replacing A with the fifth letter after A. So A, B, C, D, E, maybe E, like that. So you have to change the amount to 5 or something. I think it's reverse here because it will be, I'm already P. Okay. See, A is the second word, right? So now A has become E. Similarly, P would become P plus 5. And after Z, it just rotates itself to 0, hence the ROT 13. 13 is the middle point because we have 26 alphabets, right? 13 would always mean everything is unique. So that's the standard what do you call it, encryption we use. This in general is called Caesar ciphering. It's a famous cryptographic challenge we usually see in CTFs. It is a beginner level ones. So we covered ROT13, base 64, compression, and strings. So I think that should cover you for the next 10 questions on Bandit. I think. So we finished at 5. You should do the next 10 till 15. Till here. Yeah, that's it. You do till 15 and you're done. And submit a write-up, and that will be this finishing for the entire Linux system in general. Okay, so since we are done with that, let's move to the main topic of today. That's Windows commands. Okay, this will be a brief session because in general, exploiting Windows systems is rare because antivirus and everything usually protects, and you can't directly exploit Windows system as easily as before. And there are not many Windows system to exploit either. Like as I told you, most of the web runs on Linux. Your web servers and your FTP softwares, basically any file sharing or network sharing mostly uses Linux because it's free, right? Now Windows requires license and all of that. But yeah, as a consumer product, Windows is what we use, and it is important. For example, when we do get a chance to exploit a Linux system, like for example, now imagine we got a shell. For similarly, like how we use Netcat and Linux, there's a tool called NCAT. It comes bundled with Nmap, which is one more tool we'll be learning in the intermediate. I think it is the first session of intermediate 2. They covered Nmap. So yeah, NCAT is the replacement for NC in Netcat in Windows. So let's do that. First, let me check my IP. 192.168.151. So I'll just copy that. One more tip is to copy stuff from and do the terminal. It is Control Shift plus C. You must have seen Control C might have not worked. It'll just terminate. It'll go to open a new it'll just stop the command. Control Shift plus C will make sure it is copied properly. Same thing to paste. Control Shift plus V. It's not Control V. It's Control Shift plus V. Yeah. So let's connect. Control Shift plus V there, but here it's Control V, and let's listen on this port. C minus LVNP 3000, and let's 3000 and say minus E. Except instead of bin bash, the command prompt is CMD. That is the terminal for in Windows. So I put a CMD and come here. Now, as you see, now I have a terminal in my Kali of Windows. So now let's see the replacement commands which we used in Linux for Windows. In Windows, we don't have ls, at least not in the CMD. We have it in PowerShell, which we'll talk about later. In general, instead of using ls, we use something called dir. It does the same thing, almost exactly the same. You can see, all the files. In fact, dot files, you can see the dot files here. This is my C user folder in here. So that's the default. When you open a command prompt, it pops up in your user folder, and if you run it as admin, I think it comes as system32 folder. Basically, your run as administrator would be your root access for your PC, for your Windows machine. So see, now it is C Windows System32, not user we had, because this I ran as administrator. Okay, so let's continue. dir was the replacement for ls. mkdir works the same. Is to create a directory. cd works the same. Let me just check what else. Yeah, one more thing. You would see in Kali, I use clear to like wipe everything out that is already in the terminal, right? For Windows, there's no clear. That is CLS. Similar, but yeah, you won't see here, but here it'll be. You can see it more clearly. For example, let's do an easier drive. So dir, I want to clear everything on the screen. Just CLS. So yeah, that's the way to do it. For shifting between drives in Windows, CD doesn't work. You should just type the drive itself. So D drive is D, E drive is E, C drive is C. That's it. And the other symbol, yeah. So that's how we change directories in C. We go through ls. The replacement for ls is dir. The replacement, there is CD works the same. Then mkdir works the same. I already said. Okay. One more thing is cat. Cat command was to display the text, display the contents of a file, right? It does not exist in Windows. We use type instead. It's type followed by the name of the file. If I do, let's go to a D drive. Maybe I'll have something. dir 0 days there, no? cd 0 day. This should work. Yeah, yeah, same thing for space. Since it has a space, it won't recognize, so I put it in quotes. That's one more way to, I guess some people also did that, right? Cat spaces in the file name. There are two ways to do it. One was the backslash, and other way is using these quotes. Okay, so I'm in the directory of 0 day. Okay, now I wanna open week3.txt. I just put type week3.txt. Yeah, so see the contents of week3.txt is now available. In fact, these are the commands, some of the commands we are going through today. Okay, so the next one. Okay, now we are done with CD, CLS. Yeah, well, to open a new terminal is CMD. Yeah, that should be clear enough. There's one feature of for command prompt is to like change the date directly from the terminal. I would strongly advise not to do this, but there is a way to do it. And this might be useful later for some threat exploits. So you can just put date and followed by the date value, and it should take it in. That's how we change the date. Similarly, we have a time too. If you just put time, it will display the current time, and you can enter a new time. Ideally, do not change them in your current working personal machine, because that creates conflicts for your various applications uses it. So yeah, that's it. Find command exists the same way it has in Linux. Echo, if you remember, was to display any content to the terminal itself. If I do echo hi, it will print hi there. The same, it works exactly the same how it works in Linux. Just display that. Okay, that to display the name of the user, the host. Here, if you remember, we did who am I? Who am I, to get to know which user I was and what is my host name and everything. So similarly, we have host name in Windows. Again, just put host name, and it should tell you which what is the name of this machine right now. That is this value right there. Okay, the way we can, like, remember we had to do sudo, right, to get root access. Similarly, in Windows, the sudo, the closest thing we have to sudo is run as, and followed by the user you want to run it as. So we put admin. I think the exact is this here. It is administrator. So run as, no profile, user, my machine, and administrator, and CMD. So we follow that, and followed by the command you want to execute as the higher user. Just run it. That should run as the root, or the administrator as we call it in Windows. Okay. The shutdown is to shut down the system. It works even here. If I have not showed it yet, shutdown will shut down your machine. Reboot also is there. about logout. Shutdown and reboot are two ones we use a lot. So same way here. So yeah, that's the main commands in Windows. Again, to connect with the networks and everything. I forgot this. We use ifconfig a lot, right? In Kali to get the IP address and the ports and all other information. The similar command in Windows is ipconfig. Just one letter difference. So the if it's IP. So it should have your everything, your gateway, your IP address, and it looks cleaner, I guess. Yeah. So that was ipconfig. The ping is the same way how to just send some messages, some packets to an website or to a host or to a machine. Same way to just connect to another machine. It's just similarly how we use it in Linux. Yeah, except here it is stopped at I think 4 packets. There in Windows it goes forever unless you put a stop. We usually check this to check if you're connected to a network or not. So we can ping an IP address to not just websites. I think if it's still on, right? Yeah, this machine is still on. So I don't remember the name, the IP of it. So ifconfig 10.02.27. So ping 10.02.27. So yeah, it continuously sends bytes and sees that we have some response from it. The response time is really fast. And yeah, we won't be able to access that machine from my Windows, from my laptop, because like I said last time, this is in something called the NAT network. This NAT network currently has only 2 machines. One is my personal Kali and one is the Kali we set up in the first class. These are the only 2 machines in the network, and the gateway for this entire thing is the VirtualBox itself. The Oracle VirtualBox maintains the connections between these 2. I can transfer files, and you saw I can establish connection between these both directly because they are in the same network. But I can't establish connection between this Kali and my laptop because, as you can see, there's only one interface that only connects it to the NAT network. But if you notice last time I did ifconfig, there's actually 2 different interfaces in my personal one, which also connects it to my home network. This is your bridged adapter I was talking about if you want to connect it in your home machine. We'll talk about that in a very later class because that is comes to the networking part. Okay, so some other ones, system info. This is another important command because it gives you information about the system, right? So we'll get to know which version of Windows it's using, what connections are open. It's a very important command to know. For example, you have broken into one machine and now you want to get root access, admin access in case of Windows. You will check through the information about the system and maybe see some vulnerabilities available, and then you can escalate to the admin user. So that's very important. Okay. Then instead of copy is CP in Linux, it's copy directly. Copy source file and destination file to copy files. Instead of MV we use for Linux to move files, it's MOV. And yeah, and here in I think this is only there for Windows. There's something called even rename and replace to replace a file or rename the file. They do the job. Yeah, that is the basic commands in Windows. Okay, now another way to like for example, I want to write a program to automate all this. For example, if you remember in the last class, I automated that creating those 100 files for the grep command. Okay, so CLS, oh my god, CLS clear, CD 0-day, CD channel. Yeah, if you remember, I had that with hundreds of files in here. SH, I2.sh. What is it called? The same, right? Let me just catch that. yeah, if you can see, this is how you like program something to be done directly in the terminal using the bash. This is called bash programming. The closest thing we have to that in Windows is PowerShell programming. We use the PowerShell to execute commands. I'm not very well versed in PowerShell because the naming scheme itself is weird. But one good thing is some of the Windows commands, the Linux command we use are available like ls. And in fact, the more clearer way we use like before, like we can see all the file permissions, the last write time and everything, the size of the file and everything. There are a lot more commands we can use in PowerShell, but that itself is a huge topic. And there are really complex variable names, complex keywords which are used. But the most famous application of PowerShell, at least in the cybersecurity space, would be to create reverse shells. For example, like Netcat, you saw using Netcat, I could transfer I could get a terminal in my attacker machine, right? Similarly, we can use some different already compiled PowerShell scripts to run the same. These are basically work the same way how our programming languages work. They just execute commands, but the syntax is really complicated. At least looks complicated because they have really complex names. New object, it opens a new socket. Then this would be your same how we did for NC, right? Netcat, the IP address followed by the port, and it sends in a huge. There are a lot of lots of things this exact program does, and take a lot of time to understand and cover it. So I'll give this as maybe self study. But yeah, most of the time you will probably not work with most of these things, but in case you do, it's good to know these Windows commands. And yeah, actually that is the end of the Windows fundamentals in itself. We have nothing else to cover in Windows. Yeah, we can continue discussions. Any doubts or anything, guys? I know this session was small and quite ill-based, but that's how Windows fundamentals are usually. Any doubts, guys?
No. Yeah, no.
Okay, cool. One more thing. We won't be having a class next week because your ISAs are coming close and we don't want to interfere with your studies. So this would be the last class, at least for another week. We'll skip the next week, and once your ISA is over, we'll continue the classes. The next class would be on web fundamentals. That should be a more interesting class. We'll go through the basics of cookies, how they work, your inspect element, what are the different things that constitute a web page, how do you exploit them. We'll see some top 10 vulnerabilities that are available in websites, and we'll just give you a brief on web pen testing as a whole. So that'll be an interesting class. But that'll be after your ISS. So do practice and continue with your Linux and everything.
TryHackMe Linux fundamentals. Where do we go onwards? Windows.
Excuse me?
Once we're done with the TryHackMe Linux fundamentals, where do we go onwards? Which course should we take?
In TryHackMe, actually, there is a Windows machine, but I think it's paid. That's the reason it was not recommended. We'll hit more on this Windows machine cracking itself. We'll directly jump to cracking Windows machines. I think that will be one of your last sessions of this class, where we'll try to exploit one compromised Windows machine. Until then, for now, just keep a note of these commands. You'll probably not use them more. This is just for a basic understanding on how Windows works in general. As for the Linux part, now we are done with Linux 1, 2. I think 3 is blocked. So instead of that, we continue with Bandit. Try to make yourself more familiar with the Linux commands in general, because that's what you'll be using most of the time for exploitation. After that, now as I said, we will jump directly to web fundamentals. We won't have any assignment on Windows. That will be covered in a very later session, in one of the last sessions of this sem.